Hi, everyone, and happy Thursday. We are back for what was formerly Candid Conversations. We have since changed the title. It's much better now. This is Voices of Resilience, and we'll be doing this every Thursday for the foreseeable future, where we're going to connect with someone in our community, whether it's Lost and Found community, our physical community, where we're at with our campuses, and we're going to talk to them about we're going to have these conversations where we're talking about life. We're talking about things that lead to more resilience in their lives and in the recommendations they have for the lives of others. And we're just going to have this time to be vulnerable and open with one another. And that's a really awesome thing. So as you're watching this today, please feel free to engage in the comments. We want you to be connected. Before I introduce our guest, I'm just going to say my name is Nathan Hofer, and I am the Director of Campus Operations for Lost and Found. And like I do every one of these, just if you've never heard of Lost and Found before, we are focused on building resiliency in college students. So we focus on providing some preventative mental health factors to just assist students as they go through transitions and difficulties and as they leave college and enter the next stage of life. So we are all about making some strong mental health and being on the front end of that instead of being responsive, being proactive and assisting with that. So we love to have lots of people. We get to work with many different people with different backgrounds, from our service providers to students. And today we get to have our Vice President of the Board of Directors for Lost and Found, Nick Maddock. So Nick, hey Nick. First off, great shirt choice color. I love it.
Thank you.
So Nick is a global traveler. He is our vice president. Like I said, he's an active member of the LGBT community. And like I said, the global traveler thing, you just got done living in a van in Bulgaria. Is that where you were right before this?
I'm not done yet. I'm still going back. I just took a little break.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I'd love to hear about your world travels here, because I think your story is pretty fascinating and it might really connect and resonate with some folks, because like I said, I love it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll definitely dive into that.
Yeah, so why don't we just start, like I said, if you want to share anything about yourself to our viewers, and then like I said, I'd love to hear about your travels, like what led to that, and because as I recall from what you shared with me before, that you were at Capital One, like you were doing the thing. You were
corporate life.
So and then you're like, you know what, we're gonna go global. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more, and then, like I said, share with us about what led to this travel, because like I said, I think it's awesome.
I appreciate it. So first of all, thanks everybody who's joining in or watching this at a later time. So I'm Nick Maddock. As you mentioned, I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors for Lost and Found. And I'm excited to be here to kind of share my stories of resilience. Now, I want to be very candid and say, as a white male growing up in the suburbs of Missouri, I understand that in many aspects of my life, I come from a privileged perspective. And I want to keep that, at the forefront of these conversations. But nonetheless, I've experienced, I believe, some quite trying and difficult times, especially in recent years, where resilience has really been on the forefront of me being able to not only push through those trying times, but be able to look back and see that I've come out stronger because of those experiences. So really excited to kind of dive in and share those. So just a little background on me. Like I said, grew up in O'Fallon, Missouri, right outside of St. Louis. Went to Southeast Missouri State University for 4 years. Absolutely loved it there. Went on to get a job at Capital One, where I spent 5 years there, both as a financial analyst and a project launch manager, opening up those new Capital One cafes that you probably see all the commercials for and all around the U.S. And during that time, I lived just about all over the U.S. Literally, like, name a big city, and I've probably lived there. Absolutely loved my job, but for reasons I'm sure we're going to get into, I knew that there had to be something more in life. So about 1.5 years ago, I actually up and left and began a global journey. And as I put it, a journey to see and experience the world and its people for everything that it has to offer. So I did. I bought a one-way ticket to Southeast Asia, dropped off with a backpack, and the rest was history. since then. I've been through 60 plus countries. I've been poisoned by deadly frogs. I've picked up homeless people in Azerbaijan and had dinner with them and talked through Google Translate about their experiences. I've been stuck on more beaches in my vans than I know what to do with. And as Nathan alluded to, I actually built a van in Scotland that I live out of, and I've taken that around Europe for about the past year. So that's kind of where I am now. I'm a wanderlust in the soul, and yeah, here we are.
Yeah. So, man, by the way, if you ever want to see an awesome van build, Nick is currently creating a new van for travel. So does that mean is Vanna gone, or you're coming back to Vanna?
No, Vanna is still in Bulgaria. So Vanna is the name of my old van. It's still in Bulgaria, but I had to come back due to COVID. So while I'm here, I'm going to actually build one for North and South America, which I hope to one day take from Alaska to Argentina. So top of the world to the bottom of the world. But yeah, so we're building that now and then saving it for later.
Now, before we dive in, a really important question. Have you named the new van?
I have not named the new van yet. See, I don't want to name it until it's done, because you really get a feel for it, when the insides are there. So until I really get the full impression of the van, I don't want to name it yet.
Yeah, I understand that. That's it's similar but different to when we came up with names for our kids, and I'm like, "Ooh, should we do this?" And my wife's like, "I want to wait till I see who they are." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, by the way, if you seriously though, that van, we've had many a conference call with Nick where we're meeting at like 7 p.m. our time, and it's like 4:30 in the morning, and hanging out with Nick in Vanna, just chatting with us. So it's really great to, for a little bit at least, to be in the same time zone. At least we don't feel super guilty about talking to you at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. You kind of touched on something a little bit there that I think leads itself to expanding. You said there was some stuff that led to your travels. So I don't know if you want to dig into that and share with us what it was that led to your travels, and then maybe some of the things you've experienced while you've been on your travels.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was about a year and a half ago. And there are a few things that kind of led to it. Number one was just, I was in a financially stable place to do it. So I knew that, worst come to worst, if something went awry, I'd still be okay. I'd have a job to come back to if I really needed to, or something like that. Number two was I just got to the point where, and don't get me wrong, I loved Capital One and loved the people that I worked with, but I could have made it to be the CEO of that company and still not been fulfilled looking back on my life, had that been all that I've done. So I knew that there was just more out there that I had to experience, I had to do, and I had to see. And last but not least is, as you know, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about 5 years ago, I lost my dad to suicide very unexpectedly. And it literally just flipped my life upside down. When I lost him, not only did it change my perspective on life to just give me this mentality that life is short, tomorrow is not guaranteed by any means, which kind of helped me to just push myself out the door and really want to experience life to the fullest. But also, my dad always wanted to travel. He always wanted to see the world. He really wanted to go to Ireland and whatnot. And so part of this journey is to kind of honor him. So actually, in every country I go to, I take a little capsule of his ashes and I spread it across the world. So I think I've spread his ashes in probably over 50 different places all across the globe so far. So that's kind of a way that I fulfill his legacy of being able to travel the world and go everywhere with me.
Oh man, that was. I was unprepared for that part of that. I've become a big old softie since I've had kiddos, and now I got some tears in my eyes, legitimately. But yeah, I know we'll get into that with the stuff with your dad too. And folks, I see we have some comments coming. I see one comment from Bobby Joe saying, "Yay, Nick!" So I think you might know Bobby Joe. But seriously, if you have questions, Nick and I, we we have some stuff we're planning to talk about, but honestly, we want to engage with you. I see we've got quite a few people watching. So if you have questions as we dig in, please. No one wants to hear me ask questions. We want to hear what you want to ask. So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I know we'll dig into stuff with your dad a little later, but can you tell me too? I know we had discussed this a little bit earlier. Just like what it was like to go, not just to uproot yourself, but you got to, as you've mentioned, it's in your bio. We said it right away at the intro here. You're an active and passionate member of the LGBT community. You are constantly working for empowerment and betterment and advocating for that. So what was that like for you when you were traveling? Because tell me if your partner traveled with you for some of it or all of it?
Yeah.
So I mean, what was that like? Just, I mean, one, you're traveling the world with someone. That's like, taking a trip with anyone you see, you kind of see who they are, especially when you're living in a van. That's a different situation altogether. But you've gotten to experience what the world looks like on a level that most of us can only dream of. So what are some of the things that maybe you saw that connected with you on just a really like deep level as you're talking about, I mean, worldviews and we're in the middle of Pride Month, so obviously that's something that's on my mind, but also just in general.
Specific to the LGBT community, it's been extremely interesting. In most of the cities that I go to, I try to go to the gay bars and stuff like that to get a feel for it and understand the different cultures. And I have to be honest, I've had more trouble being LGBT here in America than I have anywhere in the world that I've gone to. Now, keep in mind, here in America, I'm comfortable and I'm loud and I'm proud, and that's probably why it's gotten me into trouble sometimes. But I understand that when I'm traveling in different countries, especially like the Middle East or Southeast Asia or something like that, I don't go out flaunting that. Me and my partner, what I would usually withhold identifying if we're gay if we weren't completely comfortable doing so. So I think that's something that's important to kind of keep in mind. But I have had absolutely zero issues on my year and a half across my travels with me identifying as LGBT. Now, something that I found extremely interesting as I go across and see all the different LGBT communities is just one striking similarity in that really just how strong not only just the LGBT community is, but how strong any community is. Because for example, I'll give you an example. I went to Russia, and I went to St. Petersburg, Russia, and I went to gay bars in Russia. Yes, you're like, wait, Russia has gay bars? Yes, Russia actually, St. Petersburg does have a lot of gay bars. So I went to a gay bar in Russia, and just to walk in that door, it was just like I was walking into any other bar here in America. You walk in and people are happy and they are themselves and they are friendly and they are just free to be who they are. And it just goes to show that, we know that LGBT citizens in Russia are oppressed and harmed at a stunning rate. But when they're in that room and they have their community, they have the strength of anybody else to be themselves. So I think it just goes to show how important community is for both the LGBT community, but just in every aspect of life to have people to lean on.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, as human beings, we're made for community. That's one of our fundamental things that we know about the way our brain is wired and the way our cities and cultures and everything exists. And it is, and when we talk about resilience, it is incredibly difficult to deal with hard things in life on an island. It's almost impossible. And so I love that what you're sharing here is that it didn't matter where you were. It mattered that you had this community around you, like that people were willing to be themselves. They're willing to be vulnerable a little bit, like you were talking about in Russia. That could be scary, like you said. And they got to be themselves. They got to feel safe. And I think that's that's impactful to me, is that, you, oh gosh, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. Like, a community of support is so important as we're looking at stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, gosh, I mean, you touched on it, and I feel like I got to ask to dig in deeper here a little bit. Is, you say, like, it's you've had zero problems in your year and a half, but you've had some more issues, with your identity here in America, in this in our country where we are right now, where we talk about freedom and all, and and it's like this core function for what we're about, and yet your experience has been one that has been harder here, even
up and down. So
yeah.
I'll say this, that overall, I think, given just perspective of other people's situations, I've had a good situation as far as my coming out process and being LGBT here in America. But let me tell you, there were some hard times, and I won't hesitate sharing them. Before I came out in 2010, by the way, the summer of 2010. So 10 years, actually, almost.
Yeah.
And say, well, yeah, right, exactly. It was actually probably right around this time too. And before I came out to everybody, I just had told my mom. My mom had told her boyfriend at the time, her ex-boyfriend now, as well. And I wasn't aware of that. Well, one time, ex-boyfriend got extremely upset and mad in an argument. And this was before I was out. It was totally hidden. The only person who I thought it knew was my mom. Well, ex-boyfriend starts yelling at me, pretty much just imagine the worst possible things that you could say to a gay man, just the worst derogatory comments you could say. He said every single one of them to me. Then not only walked out in the front yard, screamed it to all the neighbors who were having a bonfire next door, just in a mad rage. So, of course, at that time, I had no community, not a single person. I didn't have anybody I could talk to because I was so scared because I was closeted at the time. So in that time, man, it hurt. It was bad. And then, another story is when I was developing my community, this was actually the week that I came out. So it's still new to me. I still didn't have really a lot of people to lean on. But it was almost the first or second week of college when I came out. And my roommate at the time did not like that. And it got so bad as to there were threats of violence from his dad, put him on speakerphone saying, if he touches you, you better beat him up and all sorts of stuff. Took it all the way up to the dean of students to try to get me kicked out of the room or moved or relocated. Luckily, Southeast Missouri State had my back on that, and I'm very appreciative of that. But it was a struggle. It was a struggle. But I say that in hindsight, that although those experiences were a struggle, I am stronger for them and I am better for them. And in this weird way, I'm appreciative of them. Because now, after coming out and people rallying behind me and supporting me, I have never felt stronger in that regard of my identity than ever. And I owe that to, like we're talking about, the community that has my back, the people all around who rallied around me. And I know that if, people were ever to make derogatory comments about maybe LGBT or something like that, I'd have 100 people behind me to support me.
So how did you go about building your community? Because like I said, you when you came out, it sounds like you was really, I would say lonely, but hard, because you really were kind of on an island a little bit. Like, how did you go about building this? Like, having a community of, like you said, 100+ people have your back is awesome.
Yeah.
I think I hope for everyone to have that. So how did you go about kind of having to like build your community from, I would say, not the ground up, but in some ways kinda?
Yeah. So that's really interesting. I've actually thought a little about this, and that really the only kind of answer I can give is that I'm in the belief that if you are good to people and you are decent to people and you build a rapport based off that foundation, they are going to be good to you back. In almost all cases, no matter the circumstances. Because I look back at some of my friends when I came out in 2010, and let me tell you, they were not liberal or progressive on the LGBT front. We'd go to campfires and I'd hear him talk about how homos shouldn't be in the military and throwing around the F word here and there. And, of course, as a closeted man, I'm like, oh my God, they can never know and stuff like that. But you know what? Every single one of them rallied around me when I came out and said, you know what, Nick, you've been my friend for 5-10 years plus. You've done this for me. You've always been good to me. I have your back and I support you. So I again want to preface that I understand that this comes from a perspective of privilege, and that there's some people who will not have that same reaction from friends or family, whatever the circumstances. But that's how it worked for me. I guess I'm just happy with the relationships that I built, because 99% of the people stuck behind me and support me today.
That's really powerful. Also, we've got Shona here saying, "Go Nick."
Hi, Shona. Shona worked with me after one. She's wonderful.
That's awesome. See, the people there, they love you. They still love you. It doesn't. Yeah, I think I think so many times how, a couple things you said. One is like, how your hardships, we don't appreciate them maybe in the moment because they're hard, but they really can help shape us and strengthen us. But
absolutely.
I'm also just thinking, like, you're so right though, that you had, I would say, not an atypical experience, but one where you had people knew you, they trusted you, they believed in you. And I was just thinking, how often in our daily lives do we interact with people that we might interact with on the phone or connect with at the store, or someone like that we see time and again, and we don't know anything about them, but we know that they stand by you and that they're people who are deserving of love and care and friendship. You don't know every detail about them, and then is there one thing that's going to completely change all of that relationship? And for you, it's awesome that that did not happen for a lot of those folks.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
I mean, that says, how did you? I mean, it's hard. There's no way to really quantify it, I guess. But if you had what was it about that made those relationships so deep? Because, like you said, you just kind of hit the nail on the head. Like you said, some folks were saying some pretty, you said, derogatory things, and yet you had built such a strong connection with that. Like, what were some of those things that you maybe don't have an answer, and I'm throwing this one at you.
I don't know if I do. It's just like, I'd like to say I'm a good person. I'd like to say I care about others, and one of my missions in life is just empower other people to kind of see their full potential. Yeah. But other than that, I think it's just being a good person and building those rapports.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it says a lot that from what you're just saying there, I might be off base, but because folks, Nick might be our vice president, but I'm just really getting to know him, and it's been awesome so far in this time that we've been able to interact. But I was just saying, it seems to me that you've probably been one who just consistently shows up, who does what he says he's going to do. And like you said, the first time we met, I could tell that you were one who truly cared about people. And I think people can see through the BS, as it were. If someone's not doing that, we can tell if someone's not being authentic. And I think that's powerful. And I think we got a lot of people who agree. We've got Terry Cooksey saying you're a good person. Very good. So I'd agree. So what are some other things about, like, and I know that when you came out, was that your freshman year of college then?
It was literally the first week of college.
First week of college. So you went through not just any type of, you went through a huge transition of going from high school to college, and then also, going through your coming out experience right there. That's a lot of stuff that piles on. Yeah.
But it was honestly the perfect time to do it, to be honest. Yeah. I would have wanted to do it in high school.
Yeah, I understand that. 100%. Oh goodness. Yeah, high school. I don't no. My high school was quite small, so you knew everyone. Everyone knew each other. And you've known each other since kindergarten. and that can be good or bad, but it's like you kind of have yourself defined at one point or another, and you're like, it's too much work to try to show them this other side of me. But when that happened at college, like what did that lead to you getting involved with anything, any type of interaction there?
It actually did. Given that experience, I had seen kind of firsthand the work that we had to do at Southeast Missouri State University to make it a safer environment for LGBT students. So therefore, I got a student government position and whatnot, and I very heavily advocated for inclusive LGBT policies. We were one of the only four-year universities to not have a non-discrimination policy in our student code constitution. We didn't have same-sex benefits for couples who were working for the university and things of that nature. So I advocated very strong on behalf of those, and was happy that a lot of those initiatives were able to be pushed through. That kind of led me into other activism related things that ultimately I applied for a conference, and this was just on a whim, out of nowhere. I applied for a conference called Out for Undergrad. And it's a LGBT conference hosted every year in business, technology, marketing, and engineering, where they bring undergrad students who are high scholar LGBT students together to just, things like learning how to leverage, being gay in the workplace, learning how to leverage it being on a resume, learning about different career paths and industries and things like that. So I applied for this conference. I got in, and it was literally a life-changing experience. It's where I got offers at JP Morgan, Capital One, things of that nature. And it just kind of showed me what my full potential was. And since then, and obviously I accepted that job at Capital One and worked there, but since then I then started volunteering for Out for Undergrad and served as a director on their executive board and things of that nature for many years. So have always just kind of been involved with it, and absolutely love working to help LGBT students kind of see their full potential. So I will make a little plug if you know of any LGBT undergrad students who are high scholar students in the fields of business, technology, engineering, or marketing. Have them go to www.outforundergrad.org and apply, because that conference and that experience changed my life. And by the way, if they get accepted, I think besides like a $50 application fee, but acceptance fee, they get everything taken care of. Their flights out there, their hotels, everything. So anyways, life for me, but if you know LGBT high scholar students, send them that way.
Awesome. Yeah. So I have it up on the screen here. If anyone's looking, we'll put it in the comments as well. And we'll toss it in there if anyone's interested in checking that out. Now, one thing that just popped in my head here, what would you be? Well, first off, before I ask my question, we got some other shout outs. We've got Deborah, who's saying you've known me since.
She was my nurse in elementary school.
Oh. No way. Well, hi.
And we kept in touch all these years. It's building relationships. Let's go for a while.
That's awesome. Then we also have Bobby Joe popping back in here.
It's so interesting. I'm like, in some ways, I'm like worried, but then in some ways, I'm excited on like who you're gonna bring up on the screen. Like, oh, that was my ex-boyfriend from 2018.
Shucks. And then we have Terry. Terry gave a shout out again too, saying that beautiful soul. So, like I said, in the comments, if you check it out, folks, www.outforundergrad.org. Feel free to check that out. And then Nick, the question that just popped in my head. I know we've got some other stuff that we're going to get to here, but with your experience, your coming out experience, what kind of advice would you give to, as we're talking with anyone's watching this, but we're focused on right at this moment college students. So what would you tell a student like who's maybe wrestling with their identity? Like, what were some things that some pieces of advice you could give them?
Very straight and easy, and that is surround yourself with like-minded individuals. Surround yourself with people who will support you and build that community. because when the times get hard, you're going to need them to fall back on. You're going to need them to lean on. And I promise they will help you. And if they're like-minded, they'll be there to support you and get you through it. And you'll be stronger because of it.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the comments here, I mean, obviously, Nick, you have surrounded yourself with a very supportive community. Denver loves you. And I think a lot of these other folks do too. So it's great to see. I mean, I think that's really impactful that we're coming back to that community focus, like find people who can support you, find people who can invest in you. And that's regardless of what you're looking at, but especially if you're dealing with these hard questions, these hard things in your heart and mind, and figuring out who you are. There's nothing more important than a community of support.
100% agree.
Yeah, I could list a dozen different things in my life where it's been incredible to have a community around you and a community that rallies around you when you didn't know you had them. So it's important for that. Before I go into our last question here, just want you to know, I like Deborah's giving you some love, and I love it. I'm digging it. You know, this isn't I wouldn't say it's our last question by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, I know our conversation, you talked about, you talked about your dad earlier, and I might be going out on a limb here, but I think that might be part of the reason why Lost and Found as an organization might have been something you felt like you should get involved with. Is that something? Can you share a little bit about that story if you're comfortable?
Absolutely. Yep. So, so my dad passed November 30th, 2015. Obviously unexpectedly. If it's suicide, hopefully it's unexpectedly. And you know, looking back, hindsight's 2020, of course, but at the time, you know, I would have never imagined that would have been a plausible scenario of what would occur. I was actually in Costa Rica at the time. I was 2,000 miles away in the freaking northern jungles of Costa Rica, at my hostel, all alone, when I got a call from my mom at 4 a.m. in the morning, outline of what happened. And so that next 36 hours was undoubtedly the worst of my life. I had to, because flights, it's not easy to get a flight, you know, directly from Costa Rica to St. Louis, especially when you're 3 hours away from the airport, the San Jose airport. So you got to kind of go through the jungle and all that stuff. And anyways, but yeah, so for the next 36 hours, I traveled home alone during that process. And it was absolutely hell, to be honest. And you know, that entire experience, it goes without saying. It's so undeniably obvious that it was painful, that it hurt, that there were days when I just want to punch the pillow and punch the wall and punch everything and punch my dad, to be honest. Like, you're just mad, you're angry. There's so much feelings that come with that. And it hurt. But looking back at that experience, is horrible as it was at the time, and as painful as it was, I am a better person for it. To have that experience, or any traumatic experience for that matter, when you hit those lows, you have to feel the lows to know the highs. And when you hit the lows of the lows and you process them appropriately, you can walk the rest of your life knowing that if I made it through that, I can make it through anything that life is going to throw at me. So, you know, having that occur and it just, you know, knocking me down. And then not only that, we haven't even touched on this, but 3 weeks later, my brother, at 27 years old, had almost a near fatal stroke. So 3 weeks later, so 2015, early 2016 was not our year for the Maddock family. But so, yeah, so just experience all that at once. You know, when you've gone that low, and you know that it will be hard to ever go that low again, you can walk the rest of your life knowing that you can make it through anything. And I think that is extremely powerful to anybody going through any difficult time. And just understanding that you're going to come out stronger for this. Is weird as this sounds, and I always try to find the right words, but it always fails me. In some weird way, my dad gave me the greatest gift that he could have, because I know that given that growth that I experienced from that situation, I am going to live a happier and more fulfilled, maybe not happier without him here, but a more fulfilled life due to the lessons of my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it earlier, but you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And, I hate that we all probably know someone or have been affected by someone who's committed suicide. And it's unfortunately so common. One of the questions that always I think comes up when that happens, it's a different type of grief, because it's a grief that you can say in some ways could have been avoidable, and you always ask the question, well, what if? And, for a little bit during the grieving process, like rightfully so. But when my dad passed, I quickly came to the realization that I have simply two options. Take all the noise out of it, take all the pain out of it. I have two options on how to move forward. The first option is I can understand that what has occurred has occurred. It's in the past, it's done. There's literally no control I have over it right now because it has already happened. And therefore, I can live out his legacy and fulfill my dreams, which I know would make him happy. That's option one, is understanding the past is the past and moving on. Option two is sitting there and saying, oh, well, what if I would have done this? What if I would have locked up the guns? What if I would have, talked to him more? What if I would have called in that weekend? But that's not going to do nothing. It's not going to bring him back. It's not going to change anything. So coming to that realization and that understanding just helped me to say, you know what? Sure, I can grieve, but at the end of the day, there's only one option here. There's only one option that is going to make my life better, and that is to move forward, understand it happened, try to prevent it from happening to anyone in the future. But you gotta look to the future. Yeah, and I totally agree. That type of grief is very different. I lost my youngest brother a few years ago, not to suicide, just a freak accident kind of happened. But I also had a really good friend who committed suicide my freshman year of college. And it's just a very different sense of feelings. It's still a sense of grief, but it's a different type of grief, and it's hard. And you're right. You can live in the what ifs forever.
Forever. Yeah. And it can drown you if you let it. It really can.
Yeah, it's a dangerous path to walk when you're thinking like, hey, I could have been the catalyst to fix that, and that's a heavy burden, and it's usually not true, Yeah. And I guess I'd encourage it, folks. If you're dealing with anything, if you need someone to chat with, you can reach out to us. At least on a cursory level, we're at Resilient Today. I'll put a banner up for that here in just a moment. I have to make it quick because I didn't think ahead to making that. Whoopsie daisy.
And while you're making that, I'll just also put in a plug that if people just want somebody to speak to about this, who have gone through the experience and don't know how to grieve or need help, you can even reach out to me directly. I'm happy to have that conversation and talk about our mutual. And,
if you want to get a hold of Nick, you can get him on Instagram at Nick Maddock Global. And once again, I'll toss that into the chat here as well, so people can find it easily. But I would say too, there's a lot of resources out there, but you don't need to be alone. You have people who are around you willing to support you. So if you're struggling with stuff, please reach out. And then Nick, I do have a question that came up here for you. We have it from Cameron. Oh, Cameron. We went to SPC together. He's a wonderful human. Cameron, I'm sorry I'm not working downtown anymore, so I can't drive by and yell obscenities at you while you're walking your dog. Usually going, wolf whistling at you, going, I know you miss it. I know I do.
Yeah.
No, so Cameron, he's an awesome person. You are working with Lifescape, right, Cameron? I believe so. Oh, yes. And before we ask this question, Wendy Dooley, good shout out. 211, available 24 hours a day if you're dealing with some mental health struggles. You can reach out and connect there and get some help. Thank you, Wendy Dooley. That was a great answer because Wendy works with the helpline. They know what's up. I'm lucky we get to partner with them on a lot of stuff. But Cameron's question, he said, in addition to surrounding yourself with a supportive community, what are some actionable steps that you would recommend to a college student who may be looking to make those connections, but uncertain of how to do that?
Student organizations, first and foremost. That's where I found my community.
Yep.
I found it in the form of the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity, which wholeheartedly, supported me being LGBT and in every facet. I found it in student government with like-minded people who are progressive and want to push for change. I found it in my finance and economics organizations, in that particular aspect of my life. I found it in our LGBT organizations on campus. So I would just say go to your community center, campus center, whatever I guess you call it, and just look up different student organizations. Reach out, go to me. I think that's the first place to start.
Yeah,
they're probably the most appropriate.
And then I guess for me a follow-up question, which is maybe a dirty thing to do, but what would you like if a organization doesn't exist that's like an LGBT focused organization? What do you recommend for those students?
You know what I'm going to recommend.
I do.
Create your own. be the change you want to see in the world. So yeah, honestly, I mean, when I was at Southeast, when we didn't have the non-discrimination policies, I didn't just stand there and go, oh, okay, well, hope you vote on it one day. I said no. I wrote up a 50-page report that outlined, how we compared to other universities and how our university was lacking. And I pushed it through student government and through the university board and whatnot. And it worked. It got changed. So, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, and I think that I didn't know what you were going to say. I had a pretty strong inkling. And I think that, as we're talking, we had our conversation with Vani last week, and a different thing, but the same concept is, if we're going to make a change, if we're going to make this world a place that's going to be, a safer place, a place where we, take care of one another and build strong communities and want to see others succeed. It does take taking that step forward. It takes being willing to make the change and not being silent. So I appreciate you coming on here with us and not being silent and talking to us about this stuff.
Got it.
Nick, we're getting close to time here, which, I don't care. We can talk for another 3 hours. Everyone else just has to deal with it. But is there anything that you would want to share? Last minute thoughts for anyone who's watching?
Yep. I want to reiterate just one topic that I think we've hit on numerous times, actually. But just really kind of put this as our final note. It said, if you're going through tough times right now, maybe it's a bad breakup. Maybe it's a fight with your boyfriend or girlfriend. Maybe it's the loss of a loved one. Maybe it's a sickness or health issue. I know it hurts, and I know that people are struggling. But you're going to be stronger because of those circumstances. You're going to push through. And when you do, and you're able to look back at it, you're going to be a better you. So I hope that as you're going through these times, I think this will help build a more resilient individual in yourself. As you're going through these difficult times, understand that they are going to make you better, and they are going to make you stronger. The experiences that I outlined here of me coming out and having those horrible circumstances, and also the loss of my dad and my brother's stroke, those are like the three biggest catalysts for who I am today and why I'm so resilient and, in my opinion, my humble opinion, strong, in my, I guess, my mentality to just push forward. And no longer do I let the little things get to me after going through those circumstances, like, my coffee being too hot or my flat tire. Oh my God, you know how many times I've broken down in foreign countries on beaches in the middle of the wilderness and stuff like that? And I'm just like, oh, I've been through worse.
You were broke down in Bulgaria for a hot second. I was
right. So I'll just finish on this and saying that embrace the pain, embrace the failures, because you are going to be better for them. Mm-hmm. And I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick. And everyone, join us again next week. We have Thursdays are our day. Times are kind of fluid as we work with people's schedules. But Thursday next week, 2 p.m., right here on Facebook Live, we're going to be meeting with Don Carter. Don is, I got connected with him through one of our friends, Nicole Phillips, who we did some workshops with. So look back on our Facebook Live stuff. We've got Nicole Phillips around there. But Don he's a visionary thought leader. He's a speaker, a transformational coach. But before that, he was a detective in Kansas City. And as a person of color, he posted the other day, I'm a former detective and a person of color who wants to hear my take on things right now. And I said, yes, I think we could all benefit from that. So I hope you join us and spend some time with Don next week. It's going to be very exciting. And I want to say thank you again to Nick. Man, it was awesome having you on here. Remember, if you want to connect with Nick, at Nick Maddock Global, I have it in the comments. And if you want to connect with us across all our social media, want to learn about how to build a van, Nick's got you. Yep. Truly, though, he has solar panels on this new thing, and it's sweet.
Yep.
And then, like I said, connect with us on our social media with @ResilientToday. We're here for you. Reach out if you need it. We're thankful that you spent some time with us. So have a great day. See you soon.